it still acted like it's Looney Tunes, tinfoil hat wearing spaceships, on Mars with the Loch Ness Monster and Bigfoot at the helm. That's how the media continues to treat the subject.
And all of that despite the fact that the official story apparently is little more than an allegation.
Exactly. I point this out in Fabled Enemies. They made, supposedly, people within the FBI intercepted congratulatory phone calls from Embry-Riddle, of the military base in Florida, the day of 9/11. Never gets talked about. Some of the hijackers listed their home address as the Pensacola Navy Station. Ada trained at Maxwell Air Force Base. Others trained at Brooks Air Force Base. You had the guy from the Defense Language School in Monterey, California, go public after he trained a bunch of the hijackers. None of their intelligence ties are ever discussed. In Fabled Enemies, I show you how Diane, I believe it's Diane Albritton, and her husband didn't call the cops on Waleed al-Shiari and another hijacker. They called the CIA, and the CIA did nothing. And then this intertwines with Able Danger. Able Danger trying to go to the FBI 70-plus times because they have Ada and 3 others on the radar. It just doesn't make a lot of sense. And 2 of those guys, by the way, that Able Danger had on the radar were living with a tested FBI informant that the FBI didn't want to testify in the initial congressional investigation. I mean, these are facts.
Sure.
It drives me nuts. I mean, you bring all that stuff up. There should be a whole investigation into this matter. You can bring up the Pakistani ISI angle and the $100,000 that was wired to the hijackers just before the attacks. We now have a sitting vice president that admitted to this on camera, didn't dispute it, said, no big deal. We didn't know what to do. And meanwhile, he threatens Pakistan. I think it's either September 12th or September 13th, on the Senate floor, just outright threatens them, says they're pretending to be our friends. They better step up in this war on terror, which basically says you're going to let us use your land as a base or you're going to become a target, and still nothing is done. That's why I really dig what Charlie Sheen did. I think that 6.5-minute video that we've put out does hit a lot of bullet points. It's well put together. God bless Aaron Dykes. What a great job editing. He actually did that in under 24 hours, folks, which is completely impressive. Have you gotten to see the video?
I have. It's impressive, and hopefully it's generating lots of views, and hopefully it.
Well, I think it's not only important that it's generating a lot of news. I think it's important that could be someone's first step into 9/11 truth, because Charlie Sheen's involved. And yes, he came out 3 years ago, but never with something as provocative a piece that showed you the evidence up front like this. So I think it could bring more people into this 9/11 truth movement, which is what we need.
Yeah, it's a good starting point, I think, for beginners. Yeah, I think it's a good way to introduce some people to the topic. As far as even the aircraft attacks themselves are concerned and the hijackers, also having done other research, I've been able to find that the aircraft attacks were entirely possible under GPS autopilot guidance without the input of a pilot necessarily.
Well, let's talk about that, because that's obviously a theory that's out there. Go ahead.
Yeah, I've been doing heavy research for about a year on this, and some facts come to mind that, for example, brand new state-of-the-art flight management systems were being installed into United and American Boeing 757s and 767s in the very late 1990s. GPS signal errors were always in existence up until 2000. They were deliberately installed errors in the signal so that the system could not be abused. That was removed in May 2000. In August 2001, an enhanced GPS service was introduced that provided placement accuracy of about 3 meters. That service is now in use by the aviation industry. And what it does is it supports aviation corridors, basically virtual highways in the sky that reportedly, according to Raytheon, are as narrow as 243 feet. With the towers themselves being 208 feet wide, one is looking at a very strong likelihood of striking the towers under autopilot control, under GPS guidance. There's so much information I'm trying to summarize here in a few sentences, and it would take time. But I was also doing some research on the GPS signal quality on the morning of 9/11. There's a program available through a company called Trimble that allows you to access various archives of GPS data. And when one types in the coordinates for the World Trade Center, they can pull up the GPS signal quality throughout the day. And during the 90-minute period that the attacks were unfolding, it was at that time that the quality was at its highest for the entire day. There were 15 visible satellites to that location, and the satellite geometry was almost at its maximum quality output at that point, which would provide for very precise readings.
What's your take on the white plane that was on the scene of the World Trade Center before the second plane struck and was reported by Diane Sawyer and others? There's some speculation that could possibly be one of the E-4Bs that was taking place in the Global Guardian exercise, this mass Armageddon exercise that wasn't supposed to take place till October, but magically got moved up to coincide with 9/11. We know that the white plane on the scene of the Pentagon, as that attack occurred, is in fact an E-4B. What's your take on this other white plane that we now have tape of in New York City?
It's certainly interesting. I know that aircraft was some type of electronic communications platform. Also, the 9/11 aircraft models and makes were scheduled for installation of data link flight systems, which allowed for entire flight plans to be electronically transmitted to a certain aircraft, either via VHF or satellite signals, that then could be carried out entirely by autopilot. And autopilot performs equal to or even superior to pilot direction of an aircraft. These systems, Honeywell and Rockwell Collins, the aircraft themselves were designed to receive GPS navigation signals and satellite communications of various data link information, including entire flight plans that, as I said, could be uploaded to an aircraft and performed entirely under autopilot control, and supported by GPS satellite signals that provide virtual highways in the sky that are as narrow as 243 feet or 0.02 nautical miles, as described in an aviation publication by Raytheon in 2003.
Well, this seems like it would coincide with the information that, they were following American Airlines Flight 11 for 40 minutes after it supposedly hit the towers. The first plane that struck, they were following it on radar for quite some time, and that anomaly has never been sufficiently examined, in my opinion, or explained. So how is it that they're chasing this plane for 40 minutes after it supposedly struck the towers? Then you see the flight data recorder evidence from the Pentagon, and instead of dive bombing the Pentagon right in the front, it does this amazing maneuver by INFOWARRIOR, by all accounts, who was not a good pilot at all. And then it barrels into the Pentagon after clipping, I think, 4 light poles. Miraculously, there's no wing parts. The plane still hits its target so spot on that you don't find a tail section or anything, any large parts of fuselage. There were a few scraps out there, but it is very suspicious to me.
Yeah, referring to the 270-degree diving turn allegedly performed by 77, what this GPS service also supported under autopilot control were turns known as radius to fixed turns, which are basically turns with a continuous radius, and that can be either ascending or descending. This was spelled out in a report presented by Stanford in the late 1990s when they were still developing this GPS signal that was coincidentally turned on 1 year before 9/11. And as I said, supports diving continuous radius turns under autopilot control of any aircraft that's able to receive the signal and has the sufficient autopilot system.
Aidan, currently, which ones are you waiting on? What FOIA responses can we expect to see, hopefully, within the next couple of months? And what do you think are the most important responses that you're going to receive? In other words, which ones do you really want answers to?
Well, I have the lawsuit that I referred to that is pending. One I forgot to mention was the SEC records, the investigative files of 3,000 that were reportedly destroyed in Building 7. I asked the SEC for a bibliography of those. They said no such records were located. I spoke to their FOIA officer, and they said that such records would not be categorized by location, but by other means, and she really didn't elaborate beyond that. Also, others that I forgot to mention, I asked for information from FEMA of what branch of the Department of Defense had an office located in Building 7. They said they had no records for that information. As I said, I'm trying to get various information from the Department of Justice, evidence of wreckage collection, human forensic evidence from these crash scenes in Shanksville and in Arlington, to hopefully put some of these controversies to rest. Also, it records it might describe.
We will be back after this. It's the Info Warrior.